And Rogan is sitting there, and you can see the clip, and he's like, "This is great," and it's just going direct to the people, and you can say whatever you want. All you got to do is figure out how to monetize this. That's what he says.
You just need to keep doing this. We need to figure out how you make money from this.
Yeah.
That's the moment Rogan realized this was the future. So Tom Green was doing it before Rogan. He didn't have that thing that Rogan had, which is like I call it the 1,000-yard comedy stare. I'm going to be successful whether you want me to be or not. And I think that like some comics have it, and Rogan had it. And so by any means necessary thing that I give him credit for, it's just what did you do with it and what did it do to the comedy ecosystem?
What up, what up? Welcome back to another episode of Zach Reacts, where I, Zach, react to the things that populate my YouTube recommended, or at least a very small percentage of those things that come across my feed. And today, I saw a video called "Did Joe Rogan Ruin Comedy?" And this is on the Luke Thomas political channel. It's a chat between Kamau Bell, who is a stand-up and TV host, and Luke Thomas, who is an MMA and political commentator. So let's dive into it.
Is there any way to help people who maybe don't understand the effect that more broadly, not just the podcast itself, but more broadly, Joe Rogan has had on comedy? And I want to ask this in the following way, which is I came of age with really beginning into comedy after college. And, this was still the time of Patrice O'Neal. Bill Burr certainly was part of that. Colin Farrell.
I assume he means Colin Quinn. I didn't know Colin Farrell was in between filming Daredevil takes. He was going up at the Comedy Cellar doing spots between Patrice O'Neal and Jim Norton. But yeah, that was just funny to me. Me just imagining Colin Farrell going up and hanging out with Patrice O'Neal. Maybe he did. I don't know. Who am I to say that Colin Farrell never tried stand-up or wasn't in that crew? Maybe his entire stand-up career was wiped because he started doing stand-up, was terrible at it, became an actor, and then just erased everything from the internet and never released it. And Colin Farrell's stand-up career is out there somewhere on a hard drive.
Just a bunch. There's a bunch of guys at that time. And that kind of shaped the way that I saw things. At that time, Rogan was not considered even on their level. He was an LA-based guy, and he had the UFC connection. He was on Fear Factor. He did news radio. He had done some things, certainly. But as a stand-up act, if you had asked me in 2006 who would be the biggest name in 20 years, maybe I would have picked O'Neal. Maybe I would have picked Burr. I would have gotten pretty far. I would never have picked Joe Rogan, even as like him with Doug Stanhope. I would have never picked him over Doug Stanhope.
No, people would have picked. There was a point at which Stanhope really just decided he didn't care about mainstream success. So, But yes, Stanhope was considered to be, when people talk about who the inheritor of the Bill Hicks flame, it was often Stanhope, and I don't think Stanhope wanted it. But yeah.
So how did it get to where we are that it completely subverted what we had thought was going to happen?
So it's funny you say that, because I remember I've been in the Bay since '97. So I remember when Rogan first got booked at Cobb's Comedy Club, and this was a club that it's bigger now, but at the time it was like 175 seats, and this was right when a news radio had been canceled, and so Rogan was like going back on the road, and people really knew him as a sitcom star, and he was going back on the road, and so I remember going to see him. And it was really like a very mainstream, men and women are different, Rogan is a notorious stool fucker, as we say in comedy. Like a guy who, he had a bit where he would get on the stool and pretend to be fucking the stool, which is like, if you look at it, a lot of comics have a lot of judgment.
It's funny because there's already a lot of people who don't like Joe Rogan for his stand-up comedy. I would say that most people who engage with Joe Rogan fall into one of a few buckets, which is that I hate everything he fucking does. Then there's the other bucket, which is I listen to the podcast. I don't really find him funny at all on stage. I don't really find him funny on the podcast, but I'll listen to him when he has certain guests on that pique my interest. And then there's the last bucket, which is I love everything that he does. Usually, I don't think I've ever met someone who likes Joe Rogan's stand-up that doesn't listen to his podcast. I don't think that bucket exists. It's like one comes with the other. If you like the stand-up, you like the podcast. But if there are a lot of people who listen to the podcast that don't consume his stand-up, which is fine. That just comes with the nature of having a show that's literally the number one massive media in the world. But it's funny when Kamau Bell calls Joe Rogan a stool fucker, because if for some reason you've been living under a rock and you have no idea who Joe Rogan is and you search Joe Rogan, there are so many memes and hate videos out and commentaries on Rogan where the first thing you click on is a meme or a photo of him just fucking a stool for 4 seconds or like doing some act out and then involving the stool in some way to his stand-up where he's just like straight up fucking it on stage. And look, if it adds to the bit, it adds to the bit. It's just a thing that he does. I don't know what calls him to do it. I'd be curious where, like, the moment I would want to be inside Joe Rogan's head for the moment he was on stage doing open mics, or whether it was when he first started going on the road, where he was doing a bit and he sees the stool and something about the stool is just drawn immediately to his cock and pelvis, and he goes, I'm gonna fucking ram this into my dick so hard during this bit. I'm gonna fuck it like a gorilla. And there aren't even any gorillas in the bit. I'm just gonna close the bit by fucking the stool, and that's gonna elevate my stand-up somehow. A lot of people would say it doesn't. Some people will say it does. Those are the people that love Joe Rogan stand-up and listen to the podcast. But the stool fucker sticker is something that is attached to Joe Rogan in a way that it really isn't to any other comedian. I'm trying to think if there's like another physical sexual act. Like, you would think there'd be like a motorboat comedian. Just like there's a stool fucker comedian, there's the motorboat comedian, there's the fucking cunnilingus comedian that just gets right up in that mic and you know, gets the perineum a little bit of the mic, then comes back up to the lips. ABCs, just goes all over it with the tongue. There's no comedian that I can think of that does sexual acts, at least tied to them on stage, like Joe Rogan does. So, you know, he made a mark with stool fucking.
Judgment on comics who do that. Like, it's about, you know, there's a way to get the audience to react. And he would kill. And I remember a lot of people being impressed with how funny he was because they just thought he was a guy from news radio. But there's something about Rogan. I will give Rogan, especially then, he has a certain charisma that you understand that certain people have, that people started to give him credit for being a good comic in ways. I'm like, he kills, no question. But he's not, like, people started to say hicks around him. And I was like, let's all slow down a little bit. I remember a comic who will remain nameless was like, and he's got really smart jokes. I'm like what? He's got this whole joke about how Noah's Ark couldn't have really happened. I was like, where's the smart joke? like I think we all understand that that's a metaphor. Like, it's not like, I think so. But so I think there is a.
I think with Joe Rogan being held up to Bill Hicks, and I know who Bill Hicks is because I'm a fan of stand-up comedy, but I've never really consumed his stand-up. I would say Louis C.K. is probably the greatest one of my era, since I've been a fan of stand-up comedy, which is early mid-2000s to now. So when you compare Joe Rogan to Louis C.K. or Joe Rogan to Bill Hicks or whoever your god is of that era, I think a lot of it is also just comedians in the world of comedy who are in Rogan's inner circle or maybe living off the teat of Joe Rogan, who know that he's not this great of greats comedian, but they don't want to say anything. So when people make comments like Joe Rogan, Bill Hicks, or, you know, Joe Rogan, Louis C.K., or, Joe Rogan, Dave Chappelle, when you say Joe Rogan in the same breath as these other upper echelon comics, there's a pressure to just kind of go along with it and be like, oh, yeah, haha. Like, yeah, Joe Rogan's photo deserves to be on the wall next to Dave Chappelle and Louis C.K. And I'm not a comic, so I don't know what these conversations are like inside a comedy club, but I imagine there's a pressure to just sort of roll over towards the greatness of Rogan and like not like go out of your way to praise him, but when people bring up his name, you're just like, oh yeah, he's a good comic, even if deep down you don't really respect or enjoy his stuff. And there are a lot of people who do, but Kamau Bell is pointing out, at least at this point in Rogan's career, which sounds like, is pretty early on, he's already starting to gain this momentum of like being known as this intellectual comic. It sounds like before the Joe Rogan experience even started, but it's interesting that these sort of comparisons existed way back when.
There is a charisma that Rogan had, and maybe still has, but at that point, especially, he was also younger. When young Rogan is a snack, as the young kids say.
Bill Burr used to actually. I'll give Bill Burr credit. He also used to say that Rogan, when he knew him back in like the performing at the club stage, he always had a bottom of the ninth, game 7 vibe. Is how he described it. Where he's like, it was kind of,
Yeah, no, he was always pacing. He was always talking to everybody. He also was the guy who he was the headliner who wanted to hang out after the show, and it would take all the young comics to the strip club. He was like early on.
I do get that energy as a fan of stand-up comedy. When I'm in a club, there are certain type of comedians that just know how to gather and harness energy in an audience. They sort of like they're usually physical, like Rogan's very physical, and they're on stage. And if you were to write out the things that they're saying, you may not think they're very funny, but combined with the physicality and the energy and the back and forth from the crowd, the comic is sort of like channeling it into their source of just like physical manipulation of the energy of the room, and they're doing things and they're saying things, and it's almost like a chant. Like if you're doing like an ayahuasca chant, like beating drums, or if you ever done like holotropic breathing and you're just like and like the movement is starting to make you trip out and you're like, oh my God, like I'm giving over to this thing. I feel like certain comics like Rogan have that holotropic drum beating movement element where it's like, it's not even the fact that it's funny. It's the fact that it's so intoxicating and it's so energy inducing. Like it almost begs the laugh instead of deserving one all the time. And the antidote to that, or like an opposite to that, I would say is Sam Morril. I saw him at the Cellar recently. This is the Fat Black. And he came in, like there were other physical comics on the lineup, and it's hard to be physical because it's such a small stage. Like it's a really tightly packed club. But he just like came up and stood against the wall. And he's a tall dude, so he's just like leaning back against the wall and stood there telling jokes. Like, I don't even know if he moved his foot the entire time. He just like stood up back against the wall and just delivered really funny jokes. And to me, that is the opposite of a Rogan, like someone who just like chills in the pocket and just shoots and shoots and shoot. And they're like, you have no choice but to laugh, but like in a different way, where they're just like fucking like hitting you deep, like deep belly laughs with the writing and just the art of the delivery, rather than just overwhelming your senses with yelling and grunting and physicality. And I hope that comparison makes sense. I hope I'm saying it the right way, because I'm a fan of Sam Morril. I'm not saying like, he's a mummy up there. Like he does move around on stage. It's just like that particular example of Rogan where he's talking about like the guy in the bottom of the ninth where he's trying to like rally the team, and he's fucking like up in the dugout cheering like, let's go baby, come on, let's go. Like that's not Sam Morril. Sam Morril's in the pocket just just like a pitcher with no emotion, just 97 to 99 on the fucking corner, strike 3, walks calmly to the dugout. That to me is like the true mastery of the craft. Not that you can't be a great comic and also be physical, but I think if I were to guess, a lot of Rogan's physicality was developed out of his lack of being able to sit in the pocket like a quarterback. Like some quarterbacks are just fucking shooters and they sit in the pocket and they go just zip the ball right into their seat. And the other ones are kind of like more frantic, running around trying to make plays with their legs. Like Rogan's like a scrambling quarterback trying to make plays with his legs, but like he doesn't really have like that pocket Tom Brady ability.
Early on, developing a friend of comic entourage around him. And I know guys who opened for him. I never was in that thing. But so, and then I think the thing he did is he really, when he started, even before the podcast, his website started to be a place where he started to share his conspiratorial ideas. And he had a big message board, like an active message board on his website. So I think Rogan, much the way Dane Cook did, understood the importance of the internet. But because Rogan was coming from a more greasy underground way, and also the UFC probably helped, he had a diehard fan base that was probably more diehard than Dane Cook's was. And so, but it was not different. Dane Cook and Rogan were not in that sense different.
I think Dane Cook probably had just as diehard of a fan base as Rogan. I would think that, and Louis C.K. does this as well. You have to have somewhere to bring your fans and keep them for long term, for years and decades. So Dane Cook, the way he did that was MySpace. And if MySpace goes defunct, you're fucked unless you collected the contacts and the emails somehow. Joe Rogan was getting traction, started a podcast, still going to today. So his podcast acts as that funnel to get people to see his comedy because he gets 50 million downloads an episode. If only 1% of those people ever see him on the road, he's fucking crushing it. So that podcast acts as, his, what do you call it? Like your rotary, your index of people, getting them in to see you live. Louis C.K., email collection. He collected emails. He has his email list. I get emails whenever he drops his new book, or he's coming to New York, or releasing a new TV show. Like Louis C.K. has emails. So I think Dane Cook probably had just as strong of a following as Joe Rogan, and only Dane Cook knows this. So I'm just guessing, but I would say that he probably missed opportunities to leverage his early MySpace just explosive traction into long-term contacts. Like he didn't, get people's emails. He just sort of assumed that MySpace was going to be around forever. And then boom, like people switched to Facebook, Instagram. Like Dane Cook was huge because of MySpace at the beginning. Once that goes away, like that's the thing with social media. It's for free, but like, what are you really getting? You don't get people's emails. You barely get demographic information. Like the social media companies control your flow of contacting people unless you go out of your way, like Louis C.K., to collect emails at shows, or you have the number one podcast in the world like Joe Rogan. So I think Dane Cook might have just fucked himself with contact collection.
Rogan was just more X-rated. And I think that he therefore courted it, and then he got Fear Factor, which blew him up even bigger. And so I think the thing that happened with Rogan is that he understood marketing. It's like Madonna. Is Madonna the best singer? No, she is not. Is she the best pop star? No, she's not. But is she like an icon of her industry? Absolutely. And I think Rogan understood that part. But the stand-up comedy, I think, started to fade into the background. Whatever he used to be, he's not that anymore.
What's interesting, though, is like, on the one hand, I want to give him credit for changes, good or bad, that he is responsible for. On the other hand, like, for example, I mean, podcasting is something that would have taken over comedy no matter what. At the same time, in the 2010s, I know Maron predates him, but in terms of like one that really turned a cultural corner in a huge way, obviously his is the answer there.
Yeah, I think we can give him credit for that, and I don't even know. Yeah, it may have blown up, but I mean, remember, there's a clip that you might have seen of Rogan going on the Tom Green show, It's Tom Green because Tom Green was probably the first person to start like streaming on the internet when we all still had dial-up. And Rogan is sitting there, and you can see the clip, and he's like, "This is great," and it's just going direct to the people, and you can say whatever you want. He was like, and this is Rogan, and probably in his post, maybe pre-Fear Factor, but definitely post News Radio days.
It is crazy because I have seen that clip, like seeing Rogan in real time recognize the potential of an empire, and he has this moment of the show where he's on Tom Green's show, like Kamau Bell saying, he's like, holy shit, like this goes direct to consumer, and you're telling me like I don't have to fucking get notes from anybody, and I just record and I set up a studio in my house. And Tom Green's like, yeah, this is what I do. And you see the wheels spinning in Rogan's head, and his eyes just fucking light up. And then 13 years later, whatever it is, now he, has billions of downloads. But it's like I don't know, like if you saw the eyes light up of the guy who invented the tire or something, or like the fucking sandwich, where some other guy's like putting bread with meat together, and someone else is like, wait, dude, you started mixing bread and meat, and like you can fucking just like do that. And he's like, yeah, sometimes I even put like some sauce on. He's like, wait. Those have always come on a plate separately. You have the bread and you have the meat. Like, you don't fucking, like, how have you not died already mixing bread and meat? How do you digest it? And he's like, just like this. And he fucking eats it, and his eyes light up, and he's like seeing all the stores and the commercial side of it. And that's like, he like saw the commercial potential. He's like, fuck, like Tom Green's leaving a lot of money on the table. This guy who invented the sandwich, like he's enjoying it for himself, but like you got to fucking open shops, my dude. And that's like the moment on Tom Green, which is funny to watch and kind of a little haunting to watch in retrospect.
Dude, I think this is fucking awesome.
Thank you, man. See, no, I mean,
this is the craziest thing ever.
Okay,
so
cool.
You're connected.
You're connected.
Really connected.
It really is different,
Yeah.
than television.
This
or
is
anything.
way better.
It's like radio, but it's like television, and the genre is different because we can sit here and ramp. There isn't that time constraint. There isn't that pressure. I mean, we want to keep it moving.
Well, not only
but,
that, there's not a corporate pressure. See,
Yeah.
the thing that fucked up television, the thing that fucked up entertainment in general, is money. They were selling advertising. So everybody has to say certain words, don't say certain words, don't bring up certain subjects. You can't just express yourself because you're expressing yourself to someone who's selling advertising space. Yeah. And that's all and that fucks up everything. It doesn't make anything good.
We need a fucked up advertiser around here, that's all.
You just need to keep doing this. We need to figure out how you make money from this.
Yeah. I've got a lot of neat ideas I want to talk to you about because I know you're into this computer thing. I think we create a national interweb, we call it, okay? Because we're on the national internet. I think we make a thing called the national interweb. We're all creative people that are online on the web, link themselves together through a series of links, and then create a mass traffic
like a portal
gauge, like a portal,
some sort of
like a portal into the advertising revenue stream.
Yeah, no shit.
And take a little bit from the big wigs, right?
Dude, this is,
fancy suits.
They don't need to exist.
Yeah.
They're non-creative people. We talked about this before the show. They're non-creative people who are controlling creative things.
Yeah.
And they want to have their input. And it's fucking maddening. That shit that happened with Chappelle when he left Comedy
give us
Central.
jobs as well.
Yeah, they give you jobs, and it's nice that you're making ridiculous amounts of money.
We've all had great times together as well.
Fuck them, man.
We're all caught up in this thing
just
together.
abandon them. Abandon ship.
I'm kind of...
And I just wanted to say, too, another comment before the video, the first part of the video ended off, Kamau Bell mentioned something about Rogan doing podcasting and that taking over his number one concern as his stand-up slid into the background. And I've noticed this as a fan of comedy podcasts and as a fan of stand-up comedy. And as someone who hosts a podcast and realizes how much work goes into editing and preparation and researching your guests and all this shit, like it takes a lot of time. And there is, I think, a reality of a lot of stand-up comedians who got entranced by the podcast world and like the money and the ease of it, because a lot of these guys have editors. They're not doing the 90% of it behind the scenes where I finish this video, I cut it up. You're, doing sound, video, reels, thumbnails, like 95, 98% of the time I'm not recording with podcasting. I'm like doing some other shit to get the thing ready to put out. A lot of these comedians don't have to do that because they have teams. Then the podcast blows up. All of a sudden you're doing like 5, 7, I've even heard like 10 plus podcasts a week with people that are hosting like 3 different shows and being guests on 5 others, or they're recording like 3 to 4 shows in a day sometimes. And it's like, there's only so much time in a day. When are you doing stand-up? Because you got to sleep. And I would guess to say that if you tracked the comedians who are the most well-known in the podcast sphere for like doing the rounds on podcasts, and like they're putting out like 3-4 shows a week minimum, that if you looked at those comedians, their stand-up, like the quality of their stand-up, you'd probably see like an inverse relationship with the time they're spending on a mic on a podcast, where they're not writing, they're not it's still work, like you're recording, you're trying to think of funny shit, but like it doesn't really translate to stand up. I think a lot of the ways people think it does. You're funny, but you're not like working on an act. And then the inverse would be like the time on stage also plummets and the quality plummets. So like your time on the podcast is going up and the quality of your stand up is going down. I think when I look at my favorite stand-ups, like I mentioned, Sam Morril, Jessica Curson, I'm fucking blanking out right now. Michelle Wolf, Louis C.K., there's so many people who Jim Norton is another one. One of the best shows I've ever saw in my life was Jim Norton running an hour at the Fat Black at the Comedy Cellar. But yeah, like Norton, Michelle Wolf, Jessica Curson, Sam Morril, like the people who, to me, again, I'm biased to my own favorite stand-ups, but like even though they do appear on podcasts, like they seem like they're just absolute dogs when it comes to the grind of doing sets. Like, and they're not really like doing the rounds on a shit ton of other podcasts besides their own. They're doing a podcast. Some of them don't even have a podcast, or they have one, but then like they're just like absolutely grinding out the sets. And then you have other guys and girls who are just like 80% of their funny time is on podcasts and 20% of it is on the stage, where I think like the top comedians in terms of stand-up quality, like 20% of their funny time is on podcasts and like 80% of it or more is on the stage.
Yeah, it is. And he's like, all you got to do is figure out how to monetize this. That's what he says. And people go like, that's the moment Rogan realized this was the future. So yes, somebody else would. So Tom Green was doing it before Rogan, but Tom Green did not have the bottom of the ninth. He didn't have that thing that Rogan had, which is like I call it the 1,000-yard comedy.
The $ eyes.
Comedy stare. Like Ali Wong has it, like, I'm going to be successful whether you want me to be or not. And I think that like some comics have it and Rogan had it. And so by any means necessary thing that I give him credit for, it's just what did you do with it and what did it do to the comedy ecosystem?
Beyond just the business of it, what do you make of the, I'm not even going to say the quality of the art form, but I mean, if we're going to give Rogan credit for, again, good or bad, depending on your view about what it's done to the business in terms of the sort of podcasting side of things, there's the other component about like, what kind of stand-up am I going to get going to a show now? And again, there are many forces that affect this beyond Rogan. So for example, I mean, you can't open TikTok or Instagram reels without just seeing crowd work. It's just all crowd work now. And again, crowd work always, you know who did crowd work? I mean, I'm not an expert, but to the extent that I've gone to shows, it always seemed to me more so the opener and then the mid-card guy would be the one that did the most of the crowd work. And then by the time we got to the headliner, they had a little bit more of an act. Yeah, they had an act to do.
The opener and the mid.
So I think there are comedians who do great crowd work. Big J Okerson comes to mind. A lot of people hate on Matt Rife, but he puts out some funny crowd work that doesn't rely on shitting on an audience member. And Big J Okerson does this. Like, I feel like Big J, Ian Bagg, like those are like the OG crowd work guys, and Matt Rife is the new wave. But to me, good crowd work, you can tell because the comedian who's great at crowd work will use something from the audience to enhance their own line of thinking as funny, or the joke, the funny rant that they're going on. The crowd, the thing that the guy or the couple says in the front row is just a jumping off point. It's like 1% of the thing that the comedian then takes and runs with it. And it's like, okay, I'm gonna make this really funny now. And so it's kind of just like, they're not relying on the audience for the entire bit. The bad comedians make the audience member oftentimes the punchline of the joke. And these are people that are, they're paying money to come see someone, and then they're sitting in the front row and they say they have a perfectly fine job. I'm an accountant. Sorry, I went to school to get a stable job to support my wife and 3 kids. And and they're not giving that information, the audience member. They're just saying, I'm an accountant. And, the comedian's like, accountant, like, ugh, get this guy out. And it's like, these are like the crowd work clips that'll get like 3-4 million views, is like a comedian being, grotesquely offended by the job of an audience member. That's a perfectly fine member of society. But like, I feel like the shitty crowd work clips kind of like train people in audience to be like, oh yeah, he is an accountant. Like that is, let's laugh at him. Like the comedian's kind of like, a bad crowd work comedian is kind of like the cult leader of an audience, where they're like, yeah, laugh at him, laugh at this couple, blah, blah, blah. And they become the punchline. Whereas a good comedian takes the accountant thing and then like spins that into a 5-minute story of getting consistent laughs, like a Big J, like an Ian Bagg, or like has lines locked and loaded from a career of doing crowd work and stand up for 20 years. There was just this one clip I saw that had like 6 million views on Instagram, where a comedian tried to get this guy to propose to his girlfriend on the spot in the crowd. And the comedian was even like, no, dude, do it now. So to prove you're not a piece of shit, propose to your girlfriend right now. I'll give you $2,000 for the engagement ring. And the comedian was visibly fucked up on stage. I mean, he was blacked the fuck out. And this guy was understandably like, no, I'm not proposing to my girlfriend on the spot. He might have had a plan to do it a week later, a month later. Who knows? But the comedian was getting laughs in the crowd, and the punchline of the joke was, oh, look at this guy, piece of shit, like not proposing to his girlfriend on the spot at a comedy show. Like, who the fuck is going to want to do, who wants that to be the memory that you're going to tell your kids and grandkids of like, oh, I proposed to your mother because this blacked out piece of shit hack told me to propose to you. And that is a bad crowd work comedian.
How old are you? 28. You gonna meet someone better than that?
No, I say
so why not marry her? You love him? You gonna marry her? You say yes? Ask her right now. I'll pay for the whole front row. Even these fools right here, I'll pay for the whole front row. It's his fault if you guys pay. I'll put $2,000 towards your ring. Ma'am, how does this make you feel that he's just not right off the bat asking you? He's fake, right?
Yes. Yep.
You're gonna change your mind or not? No, huh? Like, no matter, look at that. The proof is in the pudding, man, and you're gonna stay, huh? You're pendeja, huh? Walk out, go ahead, we'll respect you. Hey, go backstage, go backstage. Hey, I'll take care of you. Hey, make sure she gets backstage. Hey, get the baby oil. Appreciate your girl, Baba. You gotta appreciate her, man. Oh, she's appreciating all of us right now. Appreciate your girl, man. Hey, chill out, bro. Chill. Bro, hey, chill out. Hey, come here. Hey! What the fuck was that shit?
It was a fan.
Didn't I try to calm your ass down?
So that and I was surprised, like the comments in the video were like pretty fucking supportive of the comedian. They were saying like the guy's a piece of shit and like the girl shouldn't be wasting his time with the dude. Where I'm like, this comedian is clearly looking to offload the effort of having to be funny by writing jokes or coming up with something funny based off of an answer from the crowd and just like going, oh, let me just make this guy the punchline. Let me just make him the piece of shit and get laughs, like hate laughs based on that. So crowd work, I don't want to shit on all crowd work because, again, I said there are people that do it very well, but 98% of comedians that are doing it, at least from what I'm seeing online as a fan of comedy, are just giving it a fucking horrific name.
The middle guy were like trying to fill time that they probably didn't have, whereas the headliner had an act.
Yeah, they're trying. Yeah, exactly. And they're they might be from the area too, rather than just somebody that they're.
Yeah, they can actually go. Remember what that thing that happened that one time down the street?
Down the street. Yeah, exactly. So the point I'm trying to make is, I mean, that's a YouTube thing. That's a social media thing that has now reverberated back into comedy. But to the extent that like Rogan, who has this Rogan sphere, and to the extent that he has benighted certain actors in the space. And there being like a downstream kind of influence more broadly from him and Kiltony and all these types. What has that done in your mind to what kind of comedy that you interface with when you actually go to the comedy clubs?
I mean, I will say this. I think the problem is that people think that's all of comedy, and it's not all of comedy. It's probably not even most of comedy, that type of thing. It's just the...
I wouldn't say that. I would say that people who go to stand-up clubs, who are seeing comedy in person, know that that's not all types of comedy. And look, like I listen to the Joe Rogan Experience, some episodes with guests I'm interested in. I'm not a particularly fan of his stand-up. I listen to Kiltony. I think there are a lot of great moments on that show. There are a lot of comedians I enjoy that are hosts on the panel. I think as someone who goes to clubs and like sits in an audience, when you hear people say like, oh, like New York and LA comedians are fucking pussies and like the real comedies in Austin, like I've some of the most outrageous shit I've ever heard in a comedy club has been in like a liberal city like New York or LA or whatever, and you know, Austin, it's not any more free speech. Like people say wild fucking shit in comedy clubs in every city. So as someone who's been in clubs and like, you know, phones away and someone gets on stage, people let shit fly all over the country. People that are watching these clips on TikTok or Instagram and have never actually been to a comedy show might think that all comedy is like edgelords or crowd work, but that is 100% not the case.
It's just the comedy that the algorithm eats up the most. So I would say, like, for example, I live in San Francisco. Every Sunday night, they do a thing called the Sunday Night Showcase, where you get a variety of mostly up-and-coming comedians and some veteran comedians local, where you're going to see, not all comedians are trying to crowd. Most comedians aren't trying to do crowd work. The comedians who are doing that crowd work are the comedians who, you go to their shows, and if you see cameras set up and you see some cameras aimed at the audience, that means you're the show. That means
I disagree. I think so. Obviously, you don't want to burn all of your material on social media. So I'm totally for comedians who, maybe if they're performing for 30, 40 plus minutes, maybe they're headlining doing an hour, and they have 40 to 50 minutes of material, and then the last 10 minutes they're doing crowd work, and they have cameras set up, and if there's an interaction that they like, and they get permission from the person in the audience, which a lot of times does not happen, but hopefully the comedian goes about it the right way, and they have a clip and they put it up, and that's their, IG reel for the day. I have zero problem with that. The thing that I have the most problem with as an audience member is like the comedians who get on stage clearly have not written shit, or maybe they've written like something that's going to take up 20% of their time, and then they're mining the crowd for crowd work clips at the crowd member's expense. That pisses me off. I have zero problem with someone setting up a camera in a club. I create content. I'm a whore for podcast content. I can't shade someone for trying to turn a golden crowd work moment into a reel or a TikTok that goes viral. 100%. A lot of comedians that I respect have cameras set up, and they do, if they're doing like 20 minutes, like 15 is material, and then like 5 minutes is the crowd, and maybe they post the clip, maybe they don't. But I have no problem with that. I don't agree that just because you have cameras set up means that the crowd is the joke.
That means if they're as interested in your reaction as they are into their jokes, that means you're the show. If you go to a show, the comedians got one camera set up on them, they're interested in their act. And so I would say, don't get confused and think that that is all of stand-up comedy. Now, it is a thing that like stand-up comics now have to, it's like the Rogan thing. It's like the podcasting thing. Every comic has to have a podcast because that's what comics do. And now comics feel like I do need to get some crowd work clips out there because that's the thing that we do now. But then you look at a comic like Josh Johnson. Do you know Josh Johnson's work at all?
Mm-hmm.
Like that dude is going up every week and making comics mad because he's putting out a new 50-minute set every week talking about the news of the day. And I really feel like...
By the way, I have no fucking clue how Josh Johnson does that. It is incredible that he puts out close to an hour of new material a week. He's doing like 50 specials a year, which is fucking insane. And he's clearly writing it too. Like the premises and the punchlines, like even if it's not practiced to the point of I've been working on this material for a year, because you can't, because it's news. Like it happens that week and he performs it that week, which is fucking insane. But like even with that, like you can get on a podcast and talk about a news segment and like maybe make a joke or two, and then but 80% of it is just sort of like you dry explaining the news. Like Josh Johnson is introducing a story, and then it's got like 4 to 5 funny premises for each story, and he's doing that like 5 times in a set and releasing it, and it's like polished material that shit on a lot of comedians' specials that they put out once every 2 years. And I'm not against putting out a special once every 2 years. It's just that Josh Johnson, he's probably only pissing off the comedians that put out shitty specials, because comedians that put out great specials, I would assume, have no problem with what Josh Johnson's doing, because they're just like, holy shit, that's impressive. But if you're like insecure about your specials and you think it sucks, and it does, then what Josh Johnson's doing is probably pissing you off.
That's the power of doing it your own way and counter-programming the dominant narrative. And he's already got a job on the Daily Show. He could just sit back and get those Daily Show checks. But the fact is that because he's doing that, the Daily Show then gave him a guest hosting gig that he probably would not have gotten. I'm going to say he would not have gotten if he hadn't proved himself to be a force online of his own. So I would say the big problem is that comedy is now seen. There was a point where there was a comedy boom, like when Netflix got involved, where comics could get big checks for their specials. That's generally not happening unless you are one of the bigger comedians, or a comedian who they feel like is like a Matt Rife, where it's like you've got the numbers online to prove that that people are going to watch this. When I did my Netflix special, I think I got money based on respect. Like I got a big check based on like, we like Kamau and the cut of his jib. Whereas now, many comedians you've heard of are just putting their specials up on YouTube for free.
All right, guys. Well, thank you for listening to this episode of Zach Reacts. I hope you guys enjoyed that. Did Joe Rogan ruin comedy? I don't think any one man can ruin comedy. I don't think any army of men can ruin comedy, because as long as there are stand-up comedians as long as there are comedic actors, as long as there are writers that feel a drive to make funny things, comedy can't be ruined. It's like the Hydra. You chop down one comic, like 3 more pop up. And I think a lot of there's a big divide between people right now. And I think the recent documentary, or not documentary, I don't even know what to call it. Like it really is like a Netflix quality, like cinematic piece, better than a lot of Netflix documentaries. I think the Elephant Graveyard piece on Joe Rogan, Comedy Jonestown, I think that really hit a nerve with a lot of Rogan versus anti-Rogan comedians in the universe. And as much as Rogan and the infrastructure that allowed for him to control the flow of comedy spurted up, like that is going to create a lot of like hate inspired, or not hate inspired, but like driven comics to sort of like offer an antidote to that. So I don't think you can really ruin comedy. You can affect it for sure, but no one man can take it down.